Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. Didn't get a podcast out last week. Unfortunately, we both went on some overlapping vacations. Couldn't find some time for it there. But back for UFC Vegas 81 takes place this Saturday at the UFC Apex. And, honestly, man, looking through the card, it's a pretty solid fight night, pretty solid showing. In the main event at featherweight, we got Sodiq Yusuff in his first main event spot, taking on the legend KO artist Edson Barboza. And co-main event, top-ranked women's flyweights, we got Jennifer Maia and Vivian Araujo. I'm most excited for the featured bout between Adrian, Yanez, and Jonathan Martinez. Not waste any time, man. Go ahead and let you recap how we finished up last week, and we'll get into this week's fight card.
Yeah, a little bit of a mixed bag of results. Not that either one of us were really pulling home bank. We'll take a look over at your card first. Your first play of the night, or of your card, was the under 2.5 rounds in the Maness and Mendonca fight. I ended up tailing you on that pick. It looked like it was a pretty decent price at -130, and definitely played out that way as well. It was odd that Mendonca didn't want to let go of that leg. Seemed like he would have tried something different, but yeah, that was a great play right there. Then you had the juiced women's parlay is what I was thinking in my head. The Carolina, who definitely covered her price tag, and then De La Rosa versus JJ Aldridge. Yeah, De La Rosa didn't shoot for the takedown as much as I thought she would, and when she did get it stuffed, and maybe that just made her lose some confidence, but that was only a 0.5 stab. The under 2.5 rounds in the Al Hassan Joe Pfeiffer fight, was that a parlay originally?
No, I think I don't think I could find another parlay piece with it, so I just hit it straight.
Yeah, so easy, near half unit win right there. There's no way that one's going over 2.5 rounds. Then you had Dober to win. Now that one was a parlay, correct?
I think, yeah, that one was a parlay.
Yeah, you had I don't remember what the other leg is, but you ended up having Dober -430 for 2.5 units. Yep. He looked -2,000. He looked really, really good. A little 0.5 unit gain right there. And then the under 2.5 rounds in the Morono versus Buckley fight. I almost tailed you on this one as well, because I did think that both guys had finishing upside, but Morono's a tough dude, man.
He is, man.
Yeah, you ended up the night plus 0.66 units. Nice little profit. Hard to complain right there. Looking over at my card, a lot of red, man. A lot of red for it to only be -1.5, but that kind of speaks to how I felt about the card. I took a few stabs, my first one being on Abdul Al Hassan. Now, he didn't look great, but towards the end, before he got taken down, he was really starting to wear on that lead leg, and I thought some of that power was going to end up catching Joe. I'm not completely convinced on Joe Pfeiffer, so I'm okay with him getting a win here and hopes to fade him in the future. I also had Alisson by TKO round 1. Looked like he was playing it a little safer than usual. The volume wasn't there, which is kind of what I expected, but 10-1 odds on his, most likely path to victory. Hard to pass up for me. And then my next one, worst play on the card, I'll admit, Hernandez by submission. I thought that he'd try and switch it up a little bit more, and I'm sure looking back on that fight, he wishes he switched it up a little bit more, I had Hernandez by submission at plus 1,300. That missed. The one that I wish I could get back, man, like I'd run it back again, Vanessa Demopoulos versus Kanaka Marotte, fight ends by sub. The entire fight took place on the mat. Yep. We didn't see much submission attempts from Marotte, which is a little shitty, but I do think that there were a couple finishing sequences in there where Vanessa, I don't know. I think that she could have given up her back if she took a little bit more damage, and then Vanessa constantly throwing up submissions at plus 300. I did like that stab, even though that missed. And then, as I said, tailing you on the Nate Maness versus Matus Mendonca under 2.5 rounds was the only hit of the night. Helped me out a little bit, -1.5 units on the night. And that's a manageable loss right there.
Easy.
Okay, so starting off the card in the women's strawweight division, usually they try and give us a banger right off the start. I'm not entirely convinced that this is what we're going to get. We do have Ashley Yoder taking on Emily Ducote. I think Ducote is better everywhere. I don't think that that's a hot take. I do think that she's a decent parlay piece. If I've ever seen a spot where they're trying to boost a younger fighter that lost her debut, I think this is the spot right here. Ashley Yoder's aging. I don't know. Ducote, by any way that she wants, I imagine it's going to be by decision, though. I think she's a good parlay piece.
Yeah, man. You know, laying chalk and when get you in trouble from time to time, but this might be as sure of a bet on anything on the card, if I'm going to be honest with you. You know, you talked about Yoder not looking good, coming off a 2-year layoff with surgeries and things involved. And, you know, not a very dangerous opponent. I actually compare Yoder's style to a pretty much a less shittier version of Jessica Panay. They both, you know, are long and rangy and would prefer to get the fight down to the mat. And I think, you know, the way Ducote looked in that fight, she's going to look even better against Ashley Yoder. The lead leg, you know, tearing up the lead leg. Everything here points to Ducote to me. So might have me some more juice women in my card this coming week as well. Moving on, men's bantamweight, Chris Gutierrez, AlatengHeili here. It's first bet of the night for me. I did bet Chris at minus 175. About 24 hours later, he's minus 250. And then now he sits north of 300. And at one point yesterday, man, it was even minus 400. So I don't know if it's sharp money or if he's just the mush bet of the week that I don't like to be on. But when I look at this fight, I do understand why Chris is a sizable favorite. I think he's got the takedown defense to keep this fight on the feet. I think Haley's really only path to victory here is to wrestle. And if he's not successful, I think Chris is just going to dance around the outside, use the superior striking, use the leg kicks. You know, he's got that nasty knee up the middle that he showed to Frankie Edgar. I mean, that's something that you can throw to the tier of wrestler, a short wrestler like AlatengHeili as well. I think Chris Gutierrez is a pretty solid pick here, although the line's pretty inflated at this point.
Yeah, I would line him as the favorite. I really hate the number here. I wish there was more paths to victory that I saw for AlatengHeili other than making it really close, because that's how I see him winning this. If he does, is just making it really close. He seems to have pretty good pressure. Now, he doesn't have the volume to back up the pressure, but he is making people work whenever he is moving forward. Chris Gutierrez, he gets taken down in like most every fight that he's had. So I do expect it to happen at least once. And he fights off his back foot a whole lot. It's cost him in the past. You know, he's had some really close fights where he's been out striking people, but it's not doing enough, and it doesn't look great in the judges' eyes. So I would also lean Gutierrez here. I like your number way better than the current number, but be a pass for me. Staying in the same weight class, but the women's division, Irina Alekseeva taking on Melissa Dixon. You know, the Russian Ronda Alekseeva, she's a scary girl, man. You know, pretty reckless when she goes in there. No real regard for defense at all. I do think that there's potential for her to really slow down if she comes out as hot as she did in the last fight. Where I could see Melissa Dixon starting to take over there. When Dixon is on top, she has some really good ground and pound. And I could see Alekseeva being the type of girl to kind of quit on herself if she goes out there guns a-blazing. I think we're actually seeing this pretty similar. I've yet to play it, but the under in this fight is the most appealing part of this one. As far as it being low-level women's MMA, I always tend to side with the underdog and Alekseeva, but I tend to see most of her win condition being inside the distance, the way that she fights.
Yeah, we do see the fight very similar. It's not a fight going into the week that I thought I'd kind of like plant my flag on, but I do think there's quite a few numbers off here. You know, you talked about the under at plus money, extremely tempting, but even having some girl like Alekseeva at plus money in a low-level women's MMA fight where meme finishes really can happen quite often. I think her at plus money, I think the fight's 50-50 at worst early on. You know, I do like what you're saying about Melissa taking over late. 100% agree there. She seems like she's a pretty talented grappler, but on the feet, man, I think Alekseeva could TKO her as well, man. She's a big bitch, honestly. You know, there's potential for her to be a complete fraud, but I mean, you beat someone like Stephanie Edgar. I rate Stephanie Edgar higher than Melissa Dixon, you know, and she's not afraid to go out there and miss weight. She really doesn't care. I've seen this girl's early round sub props north of like plus 1,000 as well. I think she finds the round one finish, but ultimately tracked, I think I'm just going to stay with that under 2.5, but I might have some DJ inside money on her getting some early finishes. I think the numbers are off, man. Moving on. Another short notice bout here. Terrence McKinney taking on Brendon Marotte. I haven't taped it very much to pretty much tell you why. I don't think a newcomer gets out of round one with Terrence McKinney 9 times out of 10. McKinney is as athletic, long, as underrated ground game. But here's the thing. Brendon could be a fantastic live betting spot, and so I don't have any interest betting it pre-fight. I don't really have any interest in taping this fight too much. My pick is Terrence McKinney round 1 finish. But hell, this could be an excellent spot if it gets to round 2, man.
Here's the thing. I don't think Terrence McKinney is the level of fighter to justify a 6-1 price tag. I just don't think he is. We've seen that he has holes in his game that he kind of refuses to fix. He's 14-6. We know exactly how he falls apart, and it's not something that it looks like he's trying to change at any point in his career. So to justify 6-1 seems a little wild to me, especially when you consider the fact that Brendon has never been finished. We don't really know what he looks like when he does get finished. Now, there's been some close calls on the regional scene against lower-level competition, but ultimately we have not seen that dude go out. And I don't like laying minus 600 on somebody who we know has holes against to do something that's never been done before in finishing Brendon Marotte. So yeah, while this should be a squash match, I can't get on board with that. I think I just wrote down dog or pass. You could try and get cute with the under 0.5, something like that. If you really think it's
fights.
Yeah. I mean, I think Terrence McKinney's completely accepted the fact that he's not going to be able to be a 3-round fighter. So yeah, you could get cute, but ultimately I think that there's better spots on the card. So pass for me. Moving down to the women's bantamweight division, Tainara Lisboa taking on Ravena Oliveira. Oliveira making her debut. She's done what she's supposed to do on the regional scene to the level of competition that she's faced. It's one of those ones where we know we're getting low-level women's MMA here. So
very low level.
If you want to lay minus 300 something on Lisboa, be my guest. But Lisboa is at least more proven. She's also had a lot of cans on her record, done exactly what she needed to against those cans. And the only time that she's lost is when she takes a step up in weight class, and it's against decent competition. She has a win over UFC caliber competition. I mean, that speaks volumes compared to what we've seen from Oliveira. They're both young from Brazil. I think it's a closer fight than the odds suggest. So, Lisboa is the pick, but I think it's dog or pass.
Yeah, Lisboa is the pick for me too, but no real interest in taking a side. I thought she looked decent against Jessica Rose Clark. I mean, debut in a crowd. She went out there, pieced her up on the feet, submitted her in round 2 or 3. I can't remember. She's finished all of her wins. Ravena's finished all of her wins. The girls have a 100% finish rate. But it's lined at like minus 150. I wish there was a good number on an under there. I don't think I can pay that kind of juice on even when these women have finished all their fights. That's getting kind of untouchable. But I think before I picked either side, I'd maybe look at violence here. The side's going to be Lisboa. No real conviction. I don't think I see anything better than like minus 350s floating around, and couldn't touch that either, man. Next fight, I do have a bet on the men's featherweight division, though. We got Darren Elkins taking on TJ Brown. I got 2 units on TJ Brown at minus 175. I'm pretty sure he's still floating around at that number. I saw him jump up into like the minus 220s, but I know he's come back down. I have tried to fade TJ Brown multiple times myself. The guy's fight IQ is very low level, but also don't think very many opportunities are presented to you to get to fade guys that I think are completely washed up like Darren Elkins. I think Darren Elkins is far, far past it. He is a veteran of the sport. The guy's as tough as they come, and the dude will fight for your dollar. So sitting at plus money, I get it. Some people taking a stab here, but I from what I see, his reaction, his timing, the dude looks old. The dude looks slow. He talks about retiring already before 40 years old. I'm pretty sure that's later this year. I don't like the way he reacts to punches, man. Despite TJ losing that fight to Bill Algeo last time out, he was looking good early in that fight. And I think if he lands anything of that nature on Darren Elkins here, I think he's going to put him away, man. I like TJ Brown here.
So I tend to agree with everything you said. I more than anything though, I definitely, rather than laying the juice on TJ Brown, I like the under at plus money. I think that TJ Brown, his win conditions are being the faster, more athletic dude, and he could surely catch him early. Like you said, Elkins hasn't really reacted well to punches, but he is known to slow down. And if there's anything that Elkins does, it's break people. So Elkins wearing on him over the course of 15 minutes, I could definitely see that happen. And he's somebody who's really going to push that pressure, and we're going to find out whether or not. It's just a matter of if Elkins can get to that 15th minute on, being whatever, 38 years old and really slowing down. So I'm with you on the TJ Brown side, but I think a lot of his upside is in the under. And then I also see opportunities for Elkins to, if he does have one more in the tank, I do think that TJ Brown's the style of fighter that he could break come down the line.
This might be one where we look at what fight doesn't go the distance is, because that 2.5 minutes for Darren Elkins in that third round could be huge if he's on the comeback, That's
really true. I think it's minus 120 or 25, and that's not much more to pay for the extra 2.5 minutes. That really could be a factor with Elkins. Yeah, I don't hate that at all. But the under, like I said, I'd rather pay that than TJ Brown, who, like you said, he's kind of a little bit of a roller coaster of a fighter,
Makes total sense.
Moving on to the next fight, maybe the people's main event,
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems to be
right.
Yeah, a lot of conviction on both sides. Christian Rodriguez taking on Cameron Saaiman. Rodriguez, he managed the most memorable thing about him for me is I had Jonathan Pierce by submission in that fight at like plus 450, and it was Rodriguez's debut, and JSP had him like over and over and over again in the submission, and really close to getting the submission win. And Rodriguez was just able to fight out of it. He showed a lot of, an ability to work through bad positions, and I definitely like that for him. And then he comes back in his next two against Weems, and Rosas Jr. stops the hype train there. It's kind of hard for me to gauge where Christian Rodriguez is at, but I think that this is kind of a test to see, which one is the more legit of the prospects here. You got Christian Rodriguez, who, after stopping Rosas Jr., this kind of seems like they're kind of punishing him again. It's not an easy matchup by any means. And Cameron Saaiman, also known as MSP, which I thought was kind of funny. He's undefeated, and he hasn't really proven it against the highest level of competition. We've certainly seen a couple of holes in his game since he has entered the UFC. But man, I hate paying the juice for Rodriguez. That's the biggest thing that's stopping me here. I think if this was at Pick'ems, I would lean Christian Rodriguez. So I do kind of see him getting this done. But I don't think that I have enough conviction to lay 6.5 units on Rodriguez.
I was about to say the same thing, man. This is a fight that's it's way too close to call, man. It really is. And I cashed on C-Rod against Raul Rosas Jr. I thought it was too big of a step up. He's a well-rounded guy. Comes from a great camp, man. But here we are, a guy who was an underdog. I get it, hype train in Rosas Jr., but big underdog to an 18-year-old kid. And now he's a favorite in a fight where Cameron Saaiman's used to be in the minus 300, the minus 500 in. So Cameron Saaiman's an underdog for the first time in his UFC career. It's tricky, man. I think the line is what kind of keeps me off C-Rod as well, because I think that tough fight with JSP, that's harder than anybody Cameron Saaiman's had to fight before. I do think, and
up a weight class.
You're right. And short notice, I would imagine too, if it's in that case. I think he does have an edge in wrestling. I think he does have an edge in top time. He looks a little bit more composed in there, But I think on the feet, Cameron Saaiman has an edge there. The guy's crafty to an extent, man. And these guys out of South Africa, they just find a way to get it done sometimes, man, And I don't know. I want to pick Christian Rodriguez, but I also want to tell you where I think the value is, man. And I think this is just a super close fight between two prospects that no one should be minus 1 40 or higher, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to bet Cameron Saaiman, but I also don't like being on the side of C-Rod where, I don't know, people just kind of seem to be group thinking there this week, in my opinion. So I'm going to take Cameron Saaiman, go against the grain a little bit.
Here's the other way that I'd see looking at this fight. I do think it's such a close fight and so heavily debated on MMA Twitter that it almost seems like every single time that goes to decision and it's a really close fight. So you can get minus 138. You can get minus 138 on the fight goes to decision. And I think that that's the way that I'd lay the juice on this fight if I were looking at anything.
Yeah, I do think this fight goes over more times than not. I think that's a better play than each side too.
Yeah.
We got a rematch here. At 130, catch weight between Edgar Chairez and Daniel Lacerda. First thing I want to address, Chris Taone taking a whole bunch of flack for that stoppage. And, I get it. Like, he might not have been out. He protested quickly. But I saw an angle, like, a couple days later, like, Taglioni checks the arm multiple times. And it does go limp. From a reffing perspective, I don't necessarily agree with all the flack that the guy is getting. I really don't. I think a few more seconds later, Lacerda is probably out, if you want my honest opinion. I was on that under 1.5 last time. I think that gets a bit trickier here. Neither guy has to cut as much weight. They both seen each other's weapons for a little bit time. Could be a little bit of slower pace fight, but it's kind of still hard for me to trust Lacerda's gas tank regardless. I think the guy's just shown us his true colors before. The round 2 and 3 props for Chairez, they could still hold some value here. I think it'll probably slip over into that second round this time. My question here was pretty much for you. I know you bet Lacerda last time at like plus 180 or something. Are you going to do it at plus 300 this time?
I was literally how I was leading into this one is like, I'm getting 100 points.
And he had his moments, like straight dominated.
Yeah, it's Chairez's submission defense is really good, man. I don't know how Lacerda does this, so I want to say yes, but we have seen the fight played out. Like you said, it was pretty much a finish for Chairez there, and I think you'd kind of be. I think you have to take Lacerda inside the distance, although they're not giving you much better than his money line. So it seems like you're just getting greedy by going up to plus 300 as opposed to laying plus 280 for his money line. Ultimately, I'm staying off of this fight. I don't really like it. Chairez inside the distance. I don't know if they've dropped that, but it's like minus 165. That might be the look. That's how I'd play him, and then you're kind of playing the same line as Edgar Chairez in their first fight, Right. So that's how I'd probably play it. Edgar Chairez inside the distance. That's what I'll leave with.
I agree.
Moving up to the middleweight division, Michel Periera taking on Andre Petroski. Man, this is a really good fight. I like this fight a whole lot. Andre Petroski is on a 5-fight win streak, and since his loss on The Ultimate Fighter, I think he answered a lot of the cardio questions. But it did seem a little bit shaky in his last fight against Gerald Meerschaert. Michel Periera missed weight against Wonder Boy, sent him up a weight class. I think Periera might seem like he's going to be the smaller guy on paper, just considering he is coming up from welterweight in his last fight. I bet he sizes up really, really well here. I think he looks
welterweight.
Yeah, I think he looks really big here. Petroski has also fought at welterweight in his career. It's been a minute, but all that to say, he's not the biggest welterweight. He's 6 foot tall, so he's definitely going to be giving up some height here. And Michel isn't the type of guy to really give up much size at all. He's somebody who is, had pretty good takedown defense. And even when he is getting taken down, he's popping back up to his feet. I think he's got the style that could make Andre work if he's not able to get him to the ground and ragdoll him in the opening rounds. So again, it's kind of a fight I like the under. I think Periera wins this more often than not. I think almost if Petroski can't get it to the ground and get that submission, I think he's screwed on the feet. I think Michel whoops his ass on the feet, honestly. Now, Michel hasn't been knocking people out like I really like, but so I don't like the finishing upside to lay minus 200 on him, but I think he whoops his ass if this doesn't get finished by Petroski on the ground. So under might be how I'm looking at this fight. Again, not my favorite spot. So
just to play devil's advocate on Periera, you know, I almost kind of like him going to decision lately because prior to that, he was acting like a goober and, you know, fucking losing to Tristan Connolly and illegal knee and Diego Sanchez.
Very
That's crazy
true.
that they even fought, man. Diego Sanchez and now a guy at middleweight. That's
Yeah.
crazy. But for me, all right, here's the thing, man. For me, you got a guy with an advantage, in my opinion, a big advantage on the ground, lifelong wrestler, significant, you know, jiu-jitsu. That's always super enticing to me when a guy sits at like plus 160. I do understand he's stepping up on short notice. I hope he's in some fight shape. I see Pfeiffer in camp. Sean Brady's getting ready for a fight. The guys he's working with every day, I don't think he's taking the fight if he's not in fight shape because just honestly, man, although he's kind of answered the question with the round 3 finishes, his fighting style doesn't lend well to taking fights on short notice. And I thought that was his downfall in the Ultimate Fighter. He was like the first fight. And then a couple days later, you know, this guy has to cut weight again. And his takedowns expend a lot of energy. And it could be to his demise, man. So if this fight does slip late into the second and third round, I think, like you said, Michel Periera is probably going to work this guy on the feet. He's super fast, long, unorthodox, and fighting in middleweight very well could be his true weight class. But I think Andre has a significant advantage on the fight, on the mat. You know, see him lock up a Darce like he did on Nick Maximov. His sub prop I hit at plus 600. I just think those numbers are off for a guy who has an advantage in a fight, and it's a wrestling advantage. So even if he doesn't get the submission, he could ride out Top Time for 3 rounds and just make people hate that they play juice, you know? So I like always backing a wrestler at plus money. That's why I bet this fight. Feature bout of the evening, most excited fight for me. Both these guys are honestly typically in really good fights. And to me, if you took that Rob Font fight away, Adrian Yanez comes in here at minus 250 probably. I'm just being honestly, I don't want to take anything from Rob Font. I kind of got greedy and took Rob Font by decision when he, you know, was fighting Adrian Yanez. But I think Adrian Yanez was kind of starting to believe his own hype. You know, I think he was just starting to believe he can just walk any of these guys down with his boxing, coming off multiple 50K finishes. I think a loss like that could do him some good, honestly. I really do. I think it's something that can maybe send him back to work. Maybe we see a much better improved Yanez on Saturday. His boxing has always been on another level. I think the pressure is going to stifle a lot of the kicks Martinez throw. Should be easier here to track him down in the apex cage. Martinez is a guy for me who really needs his space to work, relying on a lot of that kicking game. You and I both have never really been high on Jonathan Martinez. Think he's a little bit chinny. Think that weight cut's a little bit tough for him as well. You see a similar opponent in Davey Grant with very two different outcomes there. And I think the boxing of Yanez is very similar, man, in the way he throws those hooks around the guard to the body. I was keeping an eye out for it all week, man. As soon as I saw it touch plus money, man, I took Yanez at plus 105. I think you can get him at plus 110. This is never anything less than a 50-50 fight for me. I almost come out on Adrian Yanez 55-56% of the time. So I had to take a stab on him at plus money.
This is our first legit disagreement on the card right here.
Okay.
Yeah, I got Martinez all day long. I think that in the striking, he has a lot more in his arsenal. The kicks, like you mentioned, the pressure could be an issue for him, but I think the kicks, Yanez blocks a few of them. I think he starts boxing less once he feels those kicks on his forearms. And that's really all that Adrian Yanez has in his game. I think Martinez has the option to take it to the ground and kind of give Yanez something that he hasn't seen yet in his career. You know, you look at the guys that Yanez has been beating, they're kind of ass, man. Like all of them are ass. And then they give him this huge step up in competition to Rob Font. And of course that happens, you know. It'll be interesting to see how he responds to his first UFC loss. And I don't think that they're doing any favors here, giving him Martinez, who's coming off the biggest win of his career in Said Nurmagomedov, which, you know, who knows if he actually won that fight, but I think Nurmagomedov whoops Yanez's ass too, you know, like I really do. Then the fight before that against Cub Swanson, I thought he looked really, really good, like really, really good. And Cub's shooting from a whole lot further out, But it just seems like unless you can catch Martinez early, hasn't really had the chance to settle into the fight. Yeah, he could be a little bit chinny, but I think he's going to be like the bigger guy here with more high-level experience, the grappling upside, and in the striking, I think it's similar. It's just Martinez has more weapons on the feet, and I like that for him as well. So I'm actually waiting. I was hoping that there'd be more love for Yanez, and I'm kind of hoping for even money on Martinez. I don't know how heavy I'm going to play it, but I do actually feel fairly confident on this one. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting us being on opposite sides, but that's what makes this
fight of the night too.
Yeah, that's what makes this fun right here.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the co-main event in the women's flyweight division, Jennifer Maia taking on Vivian Arujau. Didn't realize Arujau was 37. It's pretty wild.
It is.
I think there's a ton of people on Maia for her to be winning the fights the way that she has her entire career, Yeah. I don't have much on this fight. I think Arujau is the much more athletic of the two. I think that she could get this fight to the mat. She could win some top time, and that this fight is going to be a whole lot closer than -155 for Maia. So I'm on the dog here in Arujau. Not a lot of conviction, but if I look into this fight a little bit more, see face off, see how they match up and everything, I could be convinced to place a bet on plus money Arujau here.
Okay. Another little disagreement, but you're not going to catch me laying -150 on Jennifer Maia here. Right. I think both girls are in a real tricky spot. Jennifer Maia is 35 herself or something, and even with the win here, this is a good division right now, man. I don't know where these girls go. Like you look at the top 5, Grasso, Valentina, Santos, Manon, Blanchfield, even with the win, man, where do you go? You're not beating any of those girls. I don't know, man. The fight's close, like you said, likely going to decision. Typically 100% agree with you. I want the underdog ticket. And if I was betting this fight, that's probably where I'd go. I just think while Maia doesn't have the athleticism, the power and things, she does throw a little bit more volume. She's out there landing over 100 significant strikes and fights. Her boxing is a little bit sharper. I think she can keep it on the feet, make Vivi work a little bit. I know it's 3 rounds, but I don't know how much of a factor cardio is going to be, is going to be there or be a factor in the fight. But I favor Jennifer Maia's cardio if I had to pick somebody. It's a close fight, man. I'm going to pick Jennifer Maia, but I won't have any action on the co-main. Not even co-main event worthy, in my opinion. Main event, I do have some action here. I got 1 unit on Sodiq Yusuff, -155 here. I see the pictures of Edson Barboza floating around on Twitter. Guy's in phenomenal shape, but
when is he not? When is he not?
But you got to be honest with yourself, man. I don't think it's the same Edson anymore. I don't know how many cuts to 145 he really even has left in him. The fact that it's a 5-round fight, I think that favors Sodiq Yusuff, which was evident in that Arnold Allen fight. How even getting dropped in round 1 and 2, he's still coming on strong in rounds 3. If that's a 5-round fight, that's Yusuff all day. While I don't think Yusuff is, in terms of technical level, he's not a better striker than Edson, but Sodiq is a good striker himself, And I think it does take away an advantage that Edson typically. The gap in striking that Edson has on a lot of his other opponents is a lot wider than I think it is in this matchup here. And I think Sodiq's pressure and patience, I think, plays a big factor here. If anybody's going to wrestle, I like the top time of Sodiq Yusuff here. You throw in the factor of 7 years younger, a fraction of the fight miles. There's a lot of reasons why I like Sodiq Yusuff. I know he's never been a guy that you've been too high on, and looking at the division, the guy's not going to crack the top 5. I'll 100% say that. But I do think he covers -150, -155 in his first main event spot on Saturday.
I tend to agree. So I cashed in pretty big on the Edson Barboza versus Billy Quarantillo. I was on Barboza +155 for 2 units and hated that play as the fight was playing out.
I do remember us talking about that.
I hated it. I was like, okay, Edson's about to get broken right here. The way his body language, the way he was backing up against the cage, I think if he doesn't get that finish right there in that moment, he gets fucking broken by Billy Quarantillo. I really, really do think that. And, you take in his other two last fights against Bryce Mitchell and Giga Chikadze. I don't know. Bryce cooked him to the bone, I mean, he really did. And I feel like Sodiq's going to bring similar pressure, not as much wrestling, but similar pressure. Now, Sodiq, he has an awful issue of walking forward with his hands down. And, Edson, I know it's hard not to talk about Edson without somebody bringing up the spinning back wheel kick that he landed. But, I mean, there are going to be openings because of how low Sodiq Yusuff carries his hands. And I think if he does catch Edson and, get a big head about him, starts not keeping his hands up, there's going to be opportunities for Edson to land something like a crazy knee like he just did on Billy Q or the wheel kick. So I like the under. The under 3.5 seems to have been getting hit all week. You're looking at like -150 now for the under 3.5. I do think that hits. What sucks about it is that we're talking about featherweights. So
you go to decision a lot.
Featherweight main events, they hit that scorecard quite often. But this is just I think stylistically, this is the type of fight where both guys have a lot of finishing upside. Maybe fight ends by TKO. You can maybe get it like -110 or maybe it's -140, but at least you're getting all 5 rounds. There's potential that Sodiq locks up that front choke that he has landed before. He is really, really strong enough to squeeze somebody. I don't know. I lean towards Sodiq Yusuff. I think that pressure is going to get to Edson Barboza, but I like the under in this fight, maybe by TKO.
I like him, man. I think Sadiq's probably going to likely find himself a finish as well. I wish it was 4.5. 3.5 is always a little tricky, I'm okay hitting like an over 2.5. I'm okay hitting an under 4.5. At 3.5 is a little tricky.
I agree.
Tricky. Man, I think 12 fight showing on Saturday, just looking back through the card, some solid ass fights, and I think we get a lot of finishes as well on Saturday, man. So make sure you guys are watching. I appreciate you guys hanging out, listening to the podcast. Hopefully gave out some good bets, and we'll see you guys next week for what I do believe is UFC 294.
Peace.